how to design an effective resume that'll get noticed in today's competitive job market. Coming up now on Toronto Speaks Careers. Hello and welcome. I'm Joshua Karam, host of Toronto Speaks Careers, a new addition to the Toronto Speaks series. Our goal throughout this show will be to help you enhance your job search skills and overcome challenges you may be facing in the workplace by answering your questions with easy to follow advice and guidance. Tonight we'll be tackling the important task of creating a powerful resume. Whether you're a recent graduate, unemployed, or just looking for a career change, searching for a job can be daunting. Having a solid and effective resume can greatly improve your chances of landing that dream job. A resume that best highlights what you have to offer lets potential employers know that you're the ideal candidate and gets your foot in the door. Joining me tonight to answer your questions are Ozzie Saunds, resume writer and founder of ResumeToronto.ca, a service that writes professional resumes for those who are looking for their first job or to advance in their careers. And also with us tonight is Mary Claire Treglia, a recruiting manager with Robert Half Canada, a staffing service that specializes in the temporary and full-time placement of highly skilled workers. Call us with your questions on designing an effective resume that will get noticed in today's competitive job market. The number's on your screen. Ozzie, Mary Claire, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me on our first episode of Toronto Speaks Careers.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you both. Ozzie, we're going to start with you.
Great.
You've seen a lot of resumes in your career. This is what you do for a living.
That's right.
You see the resumes that ultimately end up on Mary Claire's desk before they get there. Mm-hmm. You know what hiring staff and HR managers are looking for. What's the most important thing about a resume?
Okay, simple answer. I can say it with one word, okay? Accomplishments, accomplishments, accomplishments. But it's so important on a resume, I'm gonna even say it again, accomplishments, okay? The problem with it though is that people have a tough time actually creating accomplishment-driven statements. It gets a little easy if you're like a sales guy, because usually when you're working in sales, it's all about dollars and cents. So it's all about, you know, I sold over $1 million last year and I was the #1 sales rep at Future Shop, let's say, right? You can put that in the statement, but it gets harder if you're like an administrative assistant or a teacher, because it's hard to quantify their accomplishment. So what I tell people that I'm working with is ask yourself 3 questions in order to actually develop accomplishment-driven statements, which once again is the most important concept of a resume, accomplishment. So how do you do it? Ask yourself 3 questions.
What are those questions?
Number 1, just direct question. What is the biggest accomplishment that I've achieved? Okay, just ask yourself direct, okay? Number 2.
Biggest accomplishment in your career or in life?
Well, you want to come up with some accomplishment-driven statements for each employer, right? So ask yourself, when I worked here, what was my biggest achievement? Okay. Next, you want to ask yourself, did I improve or implement any new processes or any new innovation or products within the company, right? If you did, you can probably create an accomplishment-driven statement from that. And number 3, just ask yourself, did I do a better job than the person that had the job before me? And in what aspect did you do a better job? If you did, you can probably create some type of accomplishment-driven statement from that.
Good points, good pieces of advice. So
Very good.
let's go to Mary Claire then, who sees these resumes come across her desk regularly as a recruiting manager. Do you see that many applicants are including positive accomplishment statements, or is that something that tends to be missing?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a struggle with a lot of resumes that do come across my desk. So to Ozzie's point, I would say definitely, highlight where you've saved the company money or specific projects you've worked on, even any awards that you've won. Those are all pretty tangible things that you can highlight on your resume.
So you talked about resumes coming across your desk. I'm hearing more and more that there's a lot of poor quality resumes coming across desks these days. Would you agree?
It's hard to say, but if that is a fact, I think that could be attributed to the fact that there's so many different ways of writing a resume now and even applying for a job. So one thing I will say is make sure there's no typos on your resume. Make sure you've proofread your resume over and over, because really you would hate for one mistake to get in the way of your dream job.
So let's focus on that. What would you say, Mary Claire, is the biggest mistake on resumes? Is it typos? Is it lack of proofreading?
There's a few, definitely. I would say typos is number one, for sure. So make sure your spelling and grammar error-free. Keep it simple and professional. So no pictures. There's no need to have any big words when small words are going to do just fine. And don't misrepresent yourself, because you would hate for you to misrepresent a skill that you don't have, because that's going to get, in the way of you being successful for a job.
Great. Ozzie, what do you think? When you hear those mistakes, is that something that your clients tend to do often?
Yeah, and you know what? Don't be afraid to have a friend or a family member read over your resume. 4 eyes are always better than 2, right? And if you pass it along to a friend, they'll most likely read your resume in a different way than you're looking at it, and they'll be able to catch a lot of errors. So always just kind of pass it off to a good buddy and see what they think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A
And
fresh
what's the
set of
harm?
eyes. Fresh set of eyes. Family or friend, have them give it a look. It's amazing what they might find in terms of grammatical errors, spelling errors, or even just bring a little bit of a different visualization to what the resume format might look like.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the most important section of the resume. We'd like our callers to call in tonight, and we certainly have some great panel guests here in Ozzie and Mary Claire that are prepared to answer your questions. We're going to now talk with Ozzie about the most important section of a resume.
Okay. Definitely the beginning section, I would say, of your resume is the most important section of your resume.
Are we talking an objective statement? Is it a skills summary? What's at the beginning?
Well, it's a professional profile section, but it could also be an objective statement, okay? It really depends on the situation, but it's more, why is the beginning the most important section of a resume? And it comes back to the fact that your average resume only gets looked at for about 10 seconds, right? So if you haven't engaged the reader from the beginning of that resume, there's no reason for them to read the rest of your resume, right? So you only have 10 seconds to pique their interest. So you have to do that with either a strong professional profile statement or, if called for, an objective statement.
So let's talk about that objective statement then. How should our viewers use that objective statement? I guess, Mary Claire, I'll take that to you. Is that an objective statement that should be tailored specific to the job or the company that they're applying for?
Oh, absolutely. Never send just a general objective to each employee or each employer that you are applying for. Make sure to tailor your resume and your objective to the specific job description. Definitely. I would have to agree.
Excellent. Ozzie, is that what you share with your clients as well? Or do they like to have that simple template that they just send out en masse?
The thing about objective statements is it's overused, right? I tell my clients there's only 3 situations when you want to use objective statements, right? So, and maybe people disagree with me on this one, but 3 situations. Number 1, if you're just graduating school. Number 2, if you're just entering the workforce after a long extended absence, like this, say you had kids and you haven't been working for the last 5 or 7 years. Then you want to include an objective statement. Other than that, if you're trying to switch careers, so let's say you're a nurse, you don't want to be a nurse anymore, you want to be a teacher, right? You want to let people know exactly that you're trying to make this career change. And even though your resume says everything about nursing on it, you're looking for a job as a teacher. So you're going to have to use an objective statement to do that. But those are the only situations I would advise someone to use an objective statement. Other than that, you go for professional profile.
Just keep it with the professional profile and leave it at that. Excellent. Thanks for the great advice. These are some good starting points for our folks at home watching. We'll be right back after the break with more on Toronto Speaks Careers. Hi, and welcome back to Toronto Speaks Careers. Tonight we're discussing and answering your questions on how to design a resume that best displays your skills and achievements to prospective employers. Joining me in studio tonight are Ozzie Saunds, the founder of ResumeToronto.ca, and Mary Claire Teglia, a recruiting manager with Robert Half Canada. Welcome back. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's talk about things to avoid on a resume. We've talked about what's most important, which is highlighting your achievements and
Yep.
having a strong objective statement, a very big opening, making sure that we have our friends and family members proofread it. What are the key things, Ozzie, that you tell your clients to avoid on a resume?
Sometimes I see a lot of things that just should not be there, right? And stuff like photos.
Well, let's talk about photos.
Okay,
So,
sure. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely no photos.
no photos.
I see a lot of
No.
photos
Yeah.
on resumes, and it's funny. Okay,
And-
I
and
know
why-
where it comes from.
Where does it come from?
Okay.
Help our viewers understand.
This is where it's coming from. Now, if you're applying for a job in, let's say, Dubai or in India, okay, they require their photo on their resume. Okay, they also require some other pieces of information like date of birth, right? Religion, right? If they're married, some personal information. So when these individuals come over to Canada and they're applying for jobs, you will see stuff like photos and date of births on a resume. So it's more about people need to know if they're new to Canada that that type of private information is not really required in the hiring process here in Canada.
And Mary Claire, do you see a lot of those resumes come across your desk with photos or personal information?
I do. I think that it's not necessarily from people who don't live in Canada, but I do think that now with so much social media, people have an idea that they should put their face out there, and maybe that's how they're doing it.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Could-
Interesting. Yep.
Maybe, that's
The funny thing about
Something.
social media as well also too is that they're gonna find your pictures
Yeah.
when you're applying for a job. You're gonna be Googled, right? And
Absolutely, yeah.
sometimes they're gonna find the pictures you don't want them to see.
Well, that's how
Right, so-
it really comes back to the importance of really managing your social media networks. And I definitely want to chat about that a little bit later.
Okay, cool.
To our viewers at home, please call in. We've got some great guest panelists tonight that are ready to answer your questions. Should you have questions about getting back into the workforce, or maybe you're a new student looking for a job, or maybe you're somebody who just wants to get that next great promotion in your career, give us a call. The number's on your screen. As we go back to this idea of the don'ts of a resume, this is my personal. I won't tell you what side of the fence I sit on yet.
Okay.
But
All
what
right.
about listing your hobbies on a resume? Right or wrong? Ozzie, what do you think?
It depends.
It depends.
It really
Why
depends.
is that? What does it
Okay.
depend on?
Okay, let me give you a real good story. A short story. I'm not
short
going to
story.
drag out the whole entire story. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story, okay? So I used to work as a recruiter before founding ResumeToronto.ca. And as I was interviewing somebody, I saw one of their hobbies. Now, this person was a computer programmer, right? So their hobby was not related, it was hiking, right? So it wasn't related to the job whatsoever. But she said she hiked up to the top of Mount Fiji.
Wow.
Yeah. So right away, I saw it on the resume, and I was like, wow. Now that's a story. Tell me about that. And right away, it kind of turned the interview into I got to read her personality, I got to see how driven she was, and it was just a great conversation starter. So if you can use your hobbies like that,
Yeah, and absolutely. But, try to stay away from reading, dancing, swimming.
Yes.
Keep it focused.
yes.
Definitely.
But if you can say swimming and I won a bronze medal at the Olympics,
Well, that's an accomplishment.
All right, now we're back to achievements and accomplishments,
Yeah.
are we?
maybe you want to
Yeah.
put that on a that's
I-
something to say,
I
right?
feel like I've been swayed a little bit. I'm personally not a fan of listing
Yeah.
hobbies on resumes. However, I suppose if they are achievements, then they're worth noting. Good point. Very good. The other question that comes up often, and this is a do or don't, and I'm sure we might get some debate about this as well, And that, for our viewers sitting at home, they're asking this: do I need a cover letter when I'm submitting a resume?
Ooh.
Mary Claire, the woman who gets resumes across her desk all day as a recruiting manager, what is your thoughts on the inclusion of a cover letter?
I think it's definitely circumstantial. I do think that it can be important, whether you're explaining unemployment gaps, it's definitely good to have a cover letter because you can really state why that was. As well as if there's a specific role, you can definitely state why you're the best fit for the role and your previous experience. So it definitely depends on your audience. Yeah.
Good points, absolutely. And Ozzie, what's your sense? Do you agree?
I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to say, okay? 95, a lot of people, I'm not going to say 95%, I'm going to say a lot of people, because I don't know the exact number, so I shouldn't give it a percentage. I'm going to say a lot of people are not using their cover letters effectively, right? And because they're not using their cover letters effectively, there's no point to them even providing a cover letter.
So what's the most effective way then?
The most effective way is to actually look at the job posting and see what the requirements for the jobs are, right? Take those qualifications, those job requirements, look at them, place them in the cover letter, right? And next to those job requirements, say how many years of experience you have doing that skill that they're asking for, and where you performed, what employer you performed that skill. So now when an HR person picks up the cover letter, and let's say, for example, you're applying for a customer service job. So you look at the job posting, and some of the skills might be you need to be a great communicator, you need to be a great team player, and you have to have experience talking on the phone. So I can take those 3 skills, put it in a cover letter, and say, you should contact me based on the following. I have 5+ years of communication skills, and I performed it at my last employer, Future Shop. I also have 5+ years working in a call center, talking on the phone, and I did it at this call center. And I have 5+ years working in a team environment. And these are the employers that I worked in a team environment. So now, as a hiring manager, you don't even got to look at the resume. You can tell just by looking at the cover letter whether or not that person has all the skills you're looking for. So if you write a cover letter like that, then you're writing an effective piece of paper.
Mary Claire, I can see you want to jump in.
Well, all I was going to say was that, and really that would be a great first impression, right? Like that is your first impression mark. So if you are going to send a cover letter, make sure that it is flawless, right?
Again, goes back to making
Typos.
sure it's clear of any typos,
Yeah.
grammatical errors, getting your friends and family to give it a look over to make sure that it really comes across well. To our viewers, if you have questions about ways in which you can design a very powerful resume, please feel free to give us a call. Let's take these thoughts on cover letters, because you just talked about specifying in the cover letter some information that relates directly to the job posting.
Exactly.
We talked earlier about relating the resume to the specific industry that you're applying. What about actually tailoring portions of the resume to the job posting itself? Is that something that you would recommend to your clients and to our viewers?
I would recommend it, just based on how I just described to you how to do it. So I would dedicate a whole section of a cover letter just to outlining what skills they're looking for in the job and how I qualify for this role by how I satisfy each and every single one of their skills.
Yeah. And on the resume side, when you are applying for a job, definitely look at the job description and sort of compare your skills to the job description and really match what you have versus the job description. Nowadays, a lot of hiring managers are using keyword searches, right? So I know.
Yeah,
so
we're going to get to that.
Oh, are we?
We are definitely going to get to that. I want to
okay.
talk about that. I think that's a hugely important piece
Definitely.
for our viewers. We do have our first caller.
Oh, great.
Welcome. Sadak, you're on the show. Thanks for calling in. What question do you have for us this evening?
My question is, I'm CNC. I was CNC programmer, but I took another course now as a designer, and I just graduated from college in Toronto. So most companies, they require experience, and I don't have that experience. So what should I do to put in my resume?
Sadak, that's a great question. First of all, wanted to say congratulations on your recent graduation.
Yeah, that's great.
In terms of this question, we hear this a lot, I'm sure. I have the education, but I don't have the experience.
Yep.
What does somebody like Sadak do with that?
So what I would recommend, Sadak, is, definitely highlight the skills and accomplishments that you have already acquired, regardless of your experience. And another thing is you can definitely, what I would suggest is to gain experience is reach out to temporary agencies. That's a great way to get your foot in the door and really gain that experience and that knowledge. And you really never know who you're going to meet when you do that. Yeah.
Very good point.
Okay. Sadak, I'm sure if you studied computer science and computer programming in school, you must have done a lot of projects in school. And these projects must have covered some of the requirements that they're looking for in the job posting. So what you need to do is, instead of talking about the experience you don't have, you need to talk about what some of those projects that you completed in school were all about. Bring the focus to the projects and not your experience, but what your knowledge and what your abilities and what your potential actually is. Talk about those projects, talk about what you did in school.
Great points. Sadak, thank you very much for the call. And again, to our viewers, we encourage you to call in, get your answers to the questions in terms of the do's and don'ts for resume writing. Our next caller tonight is Tom. Tom, you're on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi,
Welcome.
Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Tom, what can we answer
Ozzie.
for
Hi,
you tonight?
everybody.
What question do you have for us this evening, Tom?
My question is in regards to resumes. I am an older worker who's been employed at one position at one company for 27 years. I took a package, and I know I'm back out on the market, but it seems like everything is driven for younger workers. What do I put on my resume? Is it okay to put that you've been employed at one place for 27 years and you're now looking for new opportunities?
Tom, I just have to say that is a brilliant question, and one that I'm sure is going to get a lot of dialogue here at the desk. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
that
We
is
have
a great
somebody
question.
like Tom, and I'm sure there's other viewers at home in a similar scenario. They've been employed with an organization for, in Tom's case, 27 years, but for many it's something a little less, even sometimes more, and they're now back in the job hunt. What do they do? Do they indicate on their resume that they are recently separated from an organization, they were packaged out, and they're now looking for that next job? Ozzie, what would you share with your
27 years at one employer shows a lot of loyalty, right? So that's something good to actually showcase on your resume, right? There's going to be employers that like to see that, right? Make sure that you're just speaking to the job posting, okay? So make sure you cover all the skills that they're asking for in the job posting. Make sure you have the education that's needed to satisfy the job requirements. And I find with older workers, sometimes their resume formatting, unfortunately, using Microsoft Office might be not something they tend to do on a day-to-day basis, it seems. So make sure that you're passing off that resume off to a friend or a family member, and they're proofing it as well too.
Great, excellent. Mary Claire, what are your thoughts on somebody like Tom who is getting back into the workforce? If you got a resume across your desk that said, you know what, I was recently separated from a company that I worked with for 25 plus years, is that something that you would look at as a positive or a deterrent?
No, I think that that's definitely a positive. And like Ozzie said, it shows your loyalty. So in regards to your resume, definitely, of course, just below your title, list the accomplishments you've done, list the skills that you've sort of been able to achieve, right, from working there for such a long time. And then in your cover letter, you can really go over why you're looking and why you're best suited for the job. And in regards to the company that you're applying to, make sure you dissect the job description and really tailor your resume to that job description. I think that will give you a great chance.
Great points, absolutely. And Tom, I would say the cover letter is a great opportunity for you to tell your story in terms of why it is that you're back out there looking for a new job. Our next caller on the line is Nina. Nina, thanks for joining us this evening. You
Thank
have
you
our
so much.
attention. What question do you have for us?
A lot of companies now post on LinkedIn, and I was just curious. I've applied to some jobs on LinkedIn, and it's just really easy to apply, but I haven't ever heard back. Is it better to just go on a company's website and apply?
Great question, Nina.
question.
The power of social networking and recruiting and how really these two areas are coming together. Is it better to apply through LinkedIn or to apply directly to the company through their corporate website? Well, let's talk to the recruiting manager. What do you think?
Hi, Nina. I definitely would say that you should do both. Why not apply on LinkedIn as well as the company website? I mean, sometimes resumes do happen to fall through the cracks. So me as a recruiter, I get emails, I get phone calls, and I actually do appreciate a phone call after I get an email because sometimes I might miss it. So I would definitely suggest using LinkedIn as well as applying on the website.
Completely agree. I think those are great points.
Yep.
Nina, thank you for your call. To our other viewers at home, please give us a call. We've got the answers to your questions, whether you're searching for that new job, you're trying to get that promotion, you have a question perhaps about how to really create a powerful resume. Maybe it's about the do's and don'ts of resume writing. Perhaps you want to know, what's that next great industry that I want to work in and how can I get my foot in the door with a great resume? Give us a call. I'm more than happy to take your questions. I'm going to, on the heels of Nina's question, let's talk about social networking and the importance of it in a job search. I look at somebody like Tom, who joined us tonight on the phone, somebody who is new to the job search world after 27 years and probably doesn't know the power of a tool like LinkedIn.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
What would we say to our viewers about the importance of social networking when it comes to searching for that job? Is it a yes or a no?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So in regards to if you are back on the job hunt and are looking for your next career, you should really start with LinkedIn and create a profile. From there, you can connect with friends, families, previous coworkers, and even get recommendations. And recommendations are going to go a long way when you are applying for a job. And like you mentioned earlier, employers Google you. They're going to Google you before you come to the interview. So if they see on your LinkedIn that you have recommendations from a previous company, that's going to be huge. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yep. And we talked earlier about absolutely no photos on your resume.
Yep.
One of the things about LinkedIn is that you actually are encouraged to use a photo. And the suggestion that I always have for individuals that I'm speaking with is to make sure that that photo is a professional photo, not a selfie, not one that's taken at the holiday Christmas party. It's got to be something that really represents your professional brand.
It's actually worth getting a professional photographer, paying him. I don't know how much photographers charge, but you are marketing yourself, and you want to do it in a professional way. You never know which employer is looking at your LinkedIn profile, so get a good pick up there.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to actually extend the conversation into the world of Google and Facebook and Twitter, and to say, Mary Claire, is that something that as a recruiter and a hiring manager you look into? Do you
Big time.
Yeah,
Big
you're
time.
you're searching candidates by name to get a sense of
Absolutely.
what they're like?
Yeah, definitely, because even on social media, you can get a sense of who they are outside of their resume. Social media is a great opportunity for candidates who are looking, because now you can research companies, you can research their mission statement, you can even go on Twitter and research their culture and their brand and how they represent themselves. But on the contrary to that, keep in mind, they're going to do the same thing to you. So before you do apply to a job, change your privacy settings, right? So you would hate for something as a college photo to get in the way of you not getting a job, right? So you have to be very careful nowadays.
You also want to make sure that when you're being Googled, that there's something to be found, right?
That's a great point.
You want to make sure you have some type of online profile. For example, I write a lot of resumes for people in journalism and for writers, right? And if you're looking for a job in journalism and you're Googled and there's nothing to be found on you, that's a concern, because it kind of questions, shouldn't you be having some type of blog, some type of current events articles that you've been writing before? If there's nothing out there at all, it's kind of draws red flags in terms of how much of a specialist are you in your field if there's nothing online at all about you.
Good points.
Yeah.
Perhaps a narrowly focused question here, but just food for thought. Are we at a point in time where it's appropriate to list your LinkedIn profile and your Facebook page and your Twitter handle right on your resume? Is that something that would be seen as appropriate, or do you hold back from that?
So I think it depends on the job. I would say always have your LinkedIn hyperlink. Absolutely, because that is considered the professional network. And if you are applying to a marketing or creative or social media position, of course you're going to want your Facebook, Twitter, blog on there, because that's going to show who you are as a social media expert. Yeah.
I agree.
Yep, that's something that you would encourage your clients
Put
to
the
do for
LinkedIn
sure.
URL out there. And with LinkedIn as well also too, there's a way for you to actually edit your URL so that it says something along the lines of www.linkedin.com/ your first name and last name. So when you, instead of the way where it's just using the numbers, right? So you can actually edit it. And then that way, when you place it on your resume, it looks really nice and professional. So I do recommend the LinkedIn address go on the resume.
Okay, great. Thank you. To our viewers at home, if you have questions about the power of social media and how it can help with your job search, please give us a call. We now have on the line Rochelle. Rochelle, what questions do you have for us tonight? Thanks for calling.
Hi there, thank you. I'm a PhD student who'll be completing her PhD very shortly, and I'll be going into the job market after about 7 years gap while being in school. And what is the best way to put together my resume so that I can showcase my skills and probably not intimidate recruiters with the fact that I have a PhD? I don't want to show, I don't want to be overqualified for certain positions.
Good question, Rochelle. Thank you very much. That question of, I have studied for something that is very aggressive and has really taken all of my time. So I don't have the opportunity to work during that experience. In Rochelle's case, 7 years. How do you best portray that to potential employers?
Yeah. Well, Rochelle, congratulations on finishing your PhD. That's a huge success. So definitely don't feel that you cannot put that on your resume. Again, I think it's going to depend on what job you are applying for and to. So definitely highlight your skills. I think that even Ozzie, who's a resume expert, is probably going to be
it's tough for me to say, Rochelle, because I don't know what type of jobs you're looking for. I don't know how many years of experience you have in that field. I don't know what your educational background is. I just know you're getting a PhD, which, once again, congratulations. And then everybody's situation is kind of unique and different, right? So how do you format your resume? I would need to get a lot more information about your current situation before I can make some suggestions. What I can tell you is that it goes back to your education. If you don't have that much experience, make sure you highlight what you know, your abilities, your knowledge. Talk about that, any projects. Perhaps you were doing a lot of research. Perhaps you did some publishing while you're in school. Those are the kind of stuff you want to focus on.
Good points. And Rochelle, on the question of intimidation, this comes up often. It's that whole concern that I don't want to intimidate the potential employer that I'm applying to. Ultimately, it comes down to making sure that you're applying for jobs that are most suitable for you based on your experience and your education. If you're getting a PhD and you're applying for an entry-level admin role, chances, and I mean that obviously just as an example, but chances are it's not going to be intimidating so much as it would just be a situation where they just won't consider you for that job because you're overqualified. To me, it's really about telling a story. What have I been doing for the last 7 years? What has that experience taught me? And what has that experience left me with that I can now bring to you as an employer to help elevate the performance of your company through me?
Yeah, and Rochelle, by doing that, you're really, the employer is going to realize how much you can add to their company. So I think that that's a great point, definitely. Yeah.
Rochelle, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it.
Wonderful, thank you.
We encourage others to call in. Want some advice on how to land that great job? Want to have your questions answered in terms of resume formatting? Please give us a call. The number's on your screen. Let's go to that. It's come up twice now in our conversation. Sure. Formatting. What is the most appropriate format for a resume? And I ask this question because there are so many options out there when it comes to building your resume. Ozzie, you're the expert. What would you tell our viewers?
Typically there's two ways you're going to do your resume. You're going to either write a chronological resume, which talks about your most recent employer towards the top of your work experience section. If you're not doing that, and under most circumstances, that is the one you're going to go with. But there might be some cases where you need to use a skills-based resume.
Okay.
Some of those cases might be if you're looking to transition into a new career. You might want to showcase your skills.
Somebody like Tom, for example.
Somebody like
Perhaps
Tom.
Perhaps if he was looking to transition into a new career.
If he was looking to do something different after 27 years, yeah, then he would look to write a skills-based resume instead of a chronological resume.
Okay.
But generally, those are the two that you're going to go with, chronological and skills.
Okay. What about actual formatting? And this comes down to those days when resumes used to be on different colored paper, scented paper. Mm-hmm. I want to get myself noticed, so I'm going to put on fancy pink photo paper, fancy font. Mm-hmm. What's appropriate when it comes to that actual formatting?
Yeah.
What would you say, Mary Claire?
Again, unless you're applying to a marketing job or something that is more creative, keep it simple, keep it standard, and consistent. Use a solid font. Don't go using 20 balloon, for example, right? Keep it Times New Roman.
Yeah. And
right?
We joke about that.
Yeah.
But we joke about it, I'm sure, from experience. I'm not suggesting that you're getting fonts in 20 balloon size, but I got to imagine, because I've seen those resumes out there, that there's ones that are just completely inappropriate.
Yeah, and if you keep it looking professional and clean, it's going to be more attractive, right? Someone's going to want to read it.
Yeah, you want to certainly keep it visually stimulating to the eye. Ozzie, you had mentioned earlier 10 seconds. 10 seconds
is the average resume gets read for approximately that amount of time. That's right.
And in those 10 seconds, is that all about the decision of, am I going to keep reading, or do they only get 10 seconds?
It's the decision of, I'm going to keep reading.
Okay.
Right? So most resumes, they don't get continued to be read, right? It's just, doesn't qualify, done, right? So you have about 10 seconds to impress them. And then if you're using different size fonts here and there, and different, there's a bullet point here and there's just check marks here, and it's not consistent throughout, it's not visually appealing, then it's not going to get read longer than the 10 seconds, that's for sure.
Is that something that you would tend to agree with, Mary Claire?
I think that as long as you have your most recent job at the top, so reverse chronological, I would recommend, and having your skills, and I wouldn't go back too far into your work experience. If you could keep your resume to 1 or 2 pages, I would say that is it, yeah.
Good. Great advice. 1 or 2 pages at the most. We're going to take our next caller. Jordan, thanks for calling this evening. What questions do you have for myself and the panel?
Yeah, hi, Mary Claire and Ozzie. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
I just had a quick question, but I think Mary Claire just answered it for me. I was wondering what the length of a resume should be.
Oh.
I've had some people say, 3 pages, and some people say try to keep it to 1 or 2.
Well, Jordan, that's definitely an important question, and Mary Claire did just speak to it, but let's talk a little bit more about that.
Talk a little bit about that, yeah.
1, 2, or 3, and I stop at 3 because if you go beyond 3, you're just completely out of the realm of necessity. So where should it be? Mary Claire, you said 1 or 2?
Yeah, I would say 2 max, unless for some reason there's something specific that you feel you need to add on. However, you shouldn't be going back. If you've been working for 20 plus years, you really only need to go back 2 or 3 jobs or the last 10, 15 years at most. So hopefully you can limit it to 1 or 2 pages. Because I think that is more attractive. And a lot of people, to be honest, who are hiring get so many resumes, they don't have time to read 3 pages resumes.
I'm going to agree, but I'm also going to agree by saying something else as well also too, suggesting something else.
What's that?
Okay. You're right, no one wants to read a resume that's longer than 2 pages long. You just don't want to do it, right? But in some cases, for example, in Jordan, I don't know what exactly it is that you do, but like for example, we have IT professionals and we have directors, IT directors working for like Scotiabank and CIBC, and we have a lot of people doing 6-month contracts when you're working in IT, 3-month contracts. So they can have like 3 different employers over a course of a year. So if you look at their last 5 years of employment, 10 years of employment, they could have like 20 different contracts in there with different projects. And if you don't discuss some of those projects in there, there's some significant accomplishments in there, right? So generally speaking, if you're in sales, customer service, if you're a teacher, 2 to 3 pages long.
Okay.
Right? So that's why I agree with you guys. But if you work on a contract basis, right? You're a project manager. You got to talk about your projects. I have seen resumes. I have written resumes that are 10 pages long.
Those
I
are
have
the-
written
the-
12 pages
the
long.
rare-
That gave him his passion for resumes.
That's where it came from.
Now he owns
The
it.
rare exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jordan, thank you for your call. We appreciate it. We now have Richard on the line. Richard, thanks for joining us. How can we help you tonight?
Okay, I've been listening to your discussions, and I agree with the 1-page resumes because I worked at Human Resources once on contract. I was an office clerk, and also I worked at Print 3, and I learned a lot of experience dealing with customers. When I create a resume, I usually do a 1-page resume.
Try to keep it to 1 page.
Yeah, and I think that based on my experience, 10 years working at Print 3, I've learned a lot of people, spoke to a lot of people, and worked with a lot of people. But you've got to realize when you leave a job, you have to update your resume.
So what question specific do you have for us, Richard?
When you type up a resume on your computer, make sure you do it correctly.
Actually, that's a great point. Let's go to this. So, especially with Richard. Richard is talking about a 1-page resume, and you're sitting in front of your computer, and you're trying to fit this square peg into a round hole. I just need to have a little bit of dialogue here about, as Richard's talking about, how to do it correctly. Is it bullet points? Is it sentences? Is it 9-point font?
So you're saying,
8-point
how do
font?
you get extra information? How are you going to squeeze it
There
into
you
a
go,
1-page
right?
resume?
Because we've got somebody like Richard who's got 10 years of great experience, and he's trying to squeeze his resume onto 1 page, which isn't right or wrong. We said 1 page would be appropriate.
It'd be nice if you can get it into
current-
1 page,
in
if you
certain
could,
times.
right? Yeah.
But I think the piece, Richard, is to make sure that we're not having margins that are 1/3 of an inch wide, just so that we can fit our resume onto 1 page, right? The formatting, again, when it comes back to that visual stimulation, that first 10 seconds is, in my opinion, really the most important piece of a resume.
Yeah, generally, so the caller's name?
Richard.
Richard, okay. Richard, focus on the last 10 to 12 years of employment. That might cut it down a little bit. And then after that, yeah, make sure you're using 11-point font. So if you're using 13, 14 right now, you can drop it down to 11. You could get away with maybe 10, 10.5, maybe.
What about sentences versus bullet points? This is a question that I hear often.
Oh, for sure. Richard, when you are writing your resume, are you writing it in sentence form or bullet form?
With my name, and then I go on the list of companies I worked for.
Okay, so it's really, it sounds like it's more about, you know, if you want to keep it from sentence form, how do you compress that into a shorter format? And you know, I tend to tell people bullet points, but as the professionals, are we okay with that?
I like bullet points. I like visually. I think it gets to the point with bullet points. This creates a much neater look. It leaves a lot of nice white space on that resume when you're using bullet points.
And bullet points are easier to read, right?
Good point.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
good point. Very good point. Richard, I want to thank you very much for calling, and to those who have called in thus far, we appreciate it. To those at home that are watching, we encourage you to call in. We're here to answer your questions on how to best put together a resume that gets noticed by potential employers. We'll be right back after the break with Toronto Speaks Careers. Hi, and welcome back to Toronto Speaks Careers. Tonight, we're discussing and answering your questions on how to design a resume that best displays your skills and achievements to prospective employers. Joining me in studio tonight are Ozzie Saunds, the founder of ResumeToronto.ca, and Mary Claire Treglia, a recruiting manager with Robert Half Canada. We've had some great calls tonight. We encourage you at home to call in before we wrap our show. If you have questions about how to design a powerful resume or how to get that next great job opportunity, we're here to answer those questions for you. Before we take the rest of the show here and wrap up, I want to go back to a few points that came up in previous conversations, things that have lingered with me. One of them is somebody who is watching at home and they have a lot of employment experience. Is it necessary to list all of your work history on your resume?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think it is. I guess it depends how long you have been employed for. If you've been employed, I would say for over 15, 20 years, you wouldn't need to put in the rest. Definitely keep it to your maybe last 2 or 3 jobs, because that's really what the hiring manager is going to focus on. And along with that, you know, they're going to take references from your last 2 or 3 jobs. So if it's a job 20, 30 years ago, they might not need a reference from there, right? So really focus on your most recent employment, your skills, your accomplishments that you've received from that, and yeah.
Don't go further than 10 to 12 years. Your last 10 to 12 years of employment, that's it. There's no need to talk about anything else prior to that.
Just keep it that century mark and or decade mark and leave it at that, right?
That's right.
Okay, just to, this is a very simple question, but when you're listing your previous employers, just to be clear, do you list your most recent employer first or last? Because I know that there's people at home that are wondering that simple question.
Yeah, I would say definitely on your resume, do reverse chronological. So your most recent first, and then work your way down from there.
Okay.
Agree.
Great, perfect. We had a little conversation earlier, and I said we're going to get back to this, and this is about the use of technology from the standpoint of recruiters, and the idea that really resumes these days that are being submitted electronically are actually being scanned before they ever get in front of a human eye. So talk to us about that, Ozzie. Talk to us about the use of keywords when our viewers are putting together their resume.
I think the viewers need to understand that an HR manager's job is not to just look at resumes all day long. Okay, and if they place a job posting on a job board, get flooded hundreds of resumes, hundreds of applicants. They don't have the time to go through them all. So they have the computer software systems in place, scanning the resume, looking for keywords. And these keywords that it's looking for are the same ones that's listed in the job posting under the requirements section. Okay? So it's going to scan it from top to bottom, and at the end of the day, it's going to give the resume a score. The score could be out of 10, it could be a star score out of like 5, it might be a quality score out of 100, and then the HR manager, all they have to do is go in there in the morning time, and all they're going to do is see a name, and they're going to see a score.
And they're going to see a score.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all
so
they're
that's
gonna
really how it works.
And if you're not going to score high,
You're never going to get it in front of people
you're
like
not gonna
Mary
get
Claire.
it. That's right.
Let's go to our next caller. Sue, you're on with
Hi.
Ozzie, Mary Claire, and myself. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
What question do you have
Hi.
for us tonight, Sue?
Hi, Sue.
Hi, I had a question. You know, on top of your resume, when you put your name, and you put your home address, and then your cell, and your email, and then your LinkedIn profile. It's a
Yep.
lot of information at the top. Do I have to put my home address now if I'm putting my cell, email, and LinkedIn?
It's a
Ooh,
good,
good question.
great question, Sue.
Yeah, that is
Well-
a very good question. I would say there's no right or wrong answer to that. I think that as long as you do have a number that you can be contacted and an email that you do check regularly, as well as your LinkedIn, but do keep in mind that an employer is probably going to ask what city you live in. Definitely.
Yeah, but they can also tell by 416-905,
Yeah.
right? So
That's a great
at the
point.
end of the day, they're gonna, if you get the job, they're going to want to know where you live.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? But other than that, do you have to put your address? Not
Not
really.
necessarily.
Yeah,
it's a
not
good question,
necessarily.
Sue. Thank you very
question,
much. Let's go to Annie, our next caller. Annie, what question do you have for us tonight?
Hi, I'm a writer and editor, and I've had a lot of contract jobs, more short-term, and that's just the nature of what I do. There are a lot of project-based jobs.
Yep.
I'm trying now to get something more stable, and a lot of people, while the resume itself I think is good, a lot of potential employers look and the first question they say is, well, wait a second, there's so much instability here. Which is sometimes ironic because a lot of the jobs out there are contract, so I'm not really sure whether to do a functional resume or a chronological resume.
If all those projects relate to the position that you're applying for, you're going to want to use a chronological resume. You only want to talk about the projects where you've actually achieved something within that contract role, and you only want to talk about the contracts that relate to the position that you're applying for. But my recommendation to you is don't spend sleepless nights in your situation because you've had so many contract roles. Don't have like sleepless nights trying to fit all that information in a 2-page resume. In your situation, you might want to extend it a little bit and try that 3-page resume format.
Yeah, good thoughts. Thank you, Annie, for the call, and thanks to everybody for calling in. Ozzie, to me, it sounds like Annie might be the perfect type of client for your service.
Yeah.
Can you, in 30 seconds or less, just help our viewers understand the type of service you could provide us?
Okay, so we do resume writing, cover letter writing. We also provide interview coaching. In terms of the cost, it's anywhere from $75 up to approximately $400. We do provide free resume critiques. So if you want us just to look at your resume and give you some pointers, that's for free.
Excellent.
Right? All you have to do is send your resume to service@ResumeToronto.ca and check out the website, ResumeToronto.ca.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we are just about wrapping up. Any final thoughts, Mary Claire, on the idea of creating a powerful resume as a recruiting manager? What might you like to see?
Yeah, I would just say, stick to what you know. Definitely be truthful on your resume. Keep it simple. Keep it as professional as possible, and definitely highlight your skills and accomplishment, because that is what's going to decipher you against other candidates who are going to be applying to the job.
Yeah, it's not just about highlighting your job experience and job accomplishments, right? It's about your skills summary. It's about what you've done. As we talked with our callers tonight, it's about what you bring to the table in terms of personal life experience, education experience, all that stuff.
But if
well, unfortunately, we're out of time, so as much as we'd love to keep talking, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're all out of time for tonight's show, so I'd like to thank Ozzie and Mary Claire for joining me this evening for our premiere episode of Toronto Speaks Careers. If you have questions or comments for our show, please email us at torontospeaks@rci.rogers.com. Tweet us your comments or questions or post them on Facebook. I'm Joshua Karam. Thanks for watching.